Hello and welcome to a Blu-ray review of a brand new release from Eureka in the Masters of Cinema range. I'm currently sick. I've been battling this illness for the past week. Still not fully over it. Viral lung infection. Yeah. So I want to get the video out. I really want to, just get it done, but do it justice at the same time. So I'm going to soldier through. So if I'm a bit short of breath, that might explain why. But we're going to talk about, in this new era for the channel now, where I've mentioned before in the previous videos about how I really would like to keep up with the new releases from Eureka, because I've been such a big fan of the company for a very long time and been collecting all the MOC releases for, almost a decade at this point. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. The first one is spine number 270 in the MOC collection. Much anticipated release for me from 1923, almost a 100-year-old film, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And before we even get anywhere close to starting this review, let's just take a look at this beautiful artwork. I mean, I'll show you some inserts later on, but holy moly, I love this gorgeous piece on the slipcover. Just fantastic, depicting the Festival of Fools. We have Esmeralda in kind of full flow at the front there, and Quasimodo, the king of the fools, watching on in, what would you say he's watching on in? He's kind of watching on in, he looks a bit confused in this painting, but he's very much in awe in the film. So yeah, I'm going to approach these new reviews of new releases in a radical style. It's never really been attempted by Blu-ray reviewers in the YouTube community that I've seen ever before. So hopefully you guys will be kind of on board with the way I'm going to approach this. So basically what I'm going to do is talk about the film, what I thought of it. Then I'm going to talk about the Blu-ray, show you some of the packaging, then talk about the extras and give you my final thoughts. I know, crazy, what a way to do it. But I just feel like, I'm just going to go for broke. A whole different, it's like a Quentin Tarantino version of doing a review. Never been done before in this order, but we're going to do it this way, my way. And let's just get into it. So, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Wow, what a film. I had never seen it before and had been intrigued about it for many years. And even, the story itself, this was my first ever exposure to the story of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is a Victor Hugo novel from the 1800s. And, the Disney film is the one that jumps to mind immediately for me. I grew up during the Disney Renaissance period, with Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, Aladdin. And Hunchback was kind of at the tail end of that kind of cycle of films, I guess. And I think I must have seen it, but I have no memory of it. So even some of the Disney films that I haven't seen in over 30 years, like Bambi, I have vague haziness kind of filled, kind of cloudy memories of those films. But Hunchback of Notre Dame, not a peep. And I feel like I must have seen it, but regardless, I really had no idea to what extent the Hunchback, Quasimodo, was a player in this story. And so watching this 1923 version directed by Wallace Worsley was an education for me, because I had the feeling that he might not be like the main focal point of the story, and he kind of isn't. Esmeralda, the gypsy girl, is the main focus of the story, or at least everything revolves around her. She's the object of many desires of different characters in the film and the story, and that's really where everything all the drama and conflict happens. So we see this kind of hunchback, this kind of deformed man who lives in Notre Dame under kind of the guidance and mentorship, I guess, of the archdeacon, the priest, and there's his brother, the nefarious brother, Jehan, who is a minor character in the book. And it's really interesting because the villain in the book is essentially the priest. But because this is 1923 Hollywood film, it was deemed not wise to depict the priest of a church as the bad guy. So they took the smaller character of the brother Jehan and made him the villain. Just kind of take the heat off the Catholic Church. I don't know. It's just one of those things where religion heavily played into how they were going to present the kind of the main villain of this film. But there are different characters of different kind of morality, and and so on as you move through the story. And I thought the film did a wonderful job of setting up all these characters fairly typically at the beginning, almost like kind of like down to the, this is this character played by this actor, this is this character, and like an introduction. One thing about this film, it's super heavy on intertitles, which I really love the silent films that kind of scale back and tell you the story in more minimal terms as far as the intertitles are concerned. And famously, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton used to have a competition with each other who could make the film with the least amount of intertitle cards. This is packed full of them, jam-packed full, but it's so beautifully written, it almost feels like watching a novel at times and reading a novel. One particular quirk I noticed on one of the intertitles, I wish I could find you the clip, I probably can't because there's so many intertitles in the film, I'd have to go through the whole film again, but there's one intertitle title card in The Hunchback of Notre Dame where there's a fly on the intertitle, so you can see very clearly how they did it. They would write and paint, because there's these very nice kind of embellishments around the title cards, and I really like it when silent films do that and it's not too plain. In this film, they really put a nice effort into the way the title cards look, but there is a fly on one of them. So when they were filming the title card, they must not have noticed the fly that was on the piece of paper or the piece of card, whatever it was, the kind of material that they used. That was just a funny kind of movie mistake for me to find. It's fun to find those kind of little gaffes in silent films. But yeah, so they introduced all these characters. The character of, I don't want to spoil it, but spoil it. This film's been out for 100 fucking years, but Esmeralda's backstory, there's a character involving that, where she comes from. I thought that was a tremendously moving part of the film. It brought me to tears at one point. It was very effective and very provoking. More provoking than anything with The Hunchback, I have to say. Which isn't to discredit, the kind of the sympathy that character evokes, or the performance of Lon Chaney, who we'll get to. But yeah, Esmeralda, everything revolves around her and the men that want her. There's Phoebus, the captain of the King's Guard, who becomes besotted with her, and he's a bit of a player. He's already engaged to someone else kind of formally, but he's kind of enchanted by the gypsy girl as a bit of a conquest at first, but then he actually falls in love with her. I think that's another thing in the book that's kind of reversed, where he is really just a Lothario, basically. But there's Phoebus, who's kind of vying for her love, and then there's Yehan, who's very much has this evil lust for her, and then there is Quasimodo, who kind of almost imprints on her when, he sees her in the Festival of Fools at the beginning and kind of is enamored with her and stuff, but when he is whipped in the kind of the courtyard and, in the public square, I should say, and she gives him water when he's thirsty. Now he's just fully like obsessed with this woman. And you can see why. One, she's pretty, she's nice to him, which is something he doesn't really experience a whole lot of. And, he's this ugly, deformed man who has probably never had any attention from a woman before, so of course he is very wrapped up in Esmeralda. There are stretches where he doesn't really appear, and I kind of miss him a bit, because Lon Chaney imbues such a wonderful screen presence into this character. And, the way he's hunched over, like literally, apparently this gave him problems for the rest of his life. He didn't live too much longer after this, actually, but I believe he died in 1930. Might be incorrect there. But regardless, he wore something that restricted his body from being fully upright. He was very famously did all of his own makeup and stuff, and there's the kind of the big wart on the eye, and the full body hair and stuff, the suit that he's wearing, and the mannerisms and stuff. But there's also this delicate nature to him, and it's the template for other great kind of monster. I feel almost bad to call him a monster character or a horror character, but I can't help but think of Frankenstein's monster, portrayed by Boris Karloff. There's this the hideous looking creature, but you feel this humanity coming out from underneath it, and that's kind of very much a big thing in the silent era, these kind of grotesque characters and stuff, and you kind of find little bits of again humanity, but like in a character that all the other people in the movie look at as inhuman or subhuman. And you can almost see that from the outer appearances, but then you get to they reveal more if there's a great performer behind it. And Lon Chaney was a great character actor, and he did a great job. He's a very memorable performance as Quasimodo. It's the facial expressions, and just there's some really like nice close-ups on him where you see so much going on. And there is all this broadness and the da 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 da, and the way he would like clamber up and down the side of Notre Dame, and and they publicized at the time that he did all of his own stunts. Not quite true, but he did a lot of them. And so he is this kind of crazed kind of creature in some parts. And Gollum is another character that springs to mind. Really, it's a great character trope. I think is this kind of the hideous, grotesque monster who has a lot more humanity in him than might seem from the outside, and it makes you think about how you judge people as well, I think, which is really a very positive thing to think about. Anyway, so there's all these things going on, and there's also Clopan, who's the kind of the king of the underworld, where Esmeralda's from. He took her in when she was very young, and there's all these different conflicts going on, and they all kind of come and go, and then it all builds to a big climax at the end. Some great sequences, huge production, epic in scale. This was the most expensive silent film, or any film, made at the time. Which, is funny how back in the silent era, they'd be like, this film cost over $1 million. Whereas these days, it's like, we did spend about $750 million on this one. But forget about that. Like, you have these films now that have, like, ludicrously, like, extravagant budgets. And you see the film and you think, where did all that money go? And they kind of like quietly brush it under the carpet. In the silent era, they want you to know about every penny that they spent, every red cent. They wanted to table how many extras were involved, and we'll get into that a little bit later on too, because I think the booklet really represents a snapshot of the time in which the film was made and promoted and kind of paraded about basically in Hollywood, in the movie industry. So it was a huge production. They built a kind of a facade of Notre Dame on the Universal backlot at Universal City, which is like a big kind of estate that they kind of created for their movies. But they didn't build the whole thing, but it was like a 200-foot high kind of like the main kind of front section. And then the rest was achieved with miniatures, apparently, or some other form of trickery. And I found that really interesting because that you can't see the seams. And at this point, I want to jump in with a quick, fairly quick at least, hopefully addendum to the video, because I was looking through the booklet again, and I realized that maybe it wasn't quite as it seemed when it comes to the construction of the set for Notre Dame in the film. In the booklet with the Blu-ray, the essay by Philip Kemp at the beginning says, work on the massive production began in September 1922. An exact replica of the lower stories of the cathedral were constructed, some 225 feet high, complete with all the 35 statues and numerous gargoyles, with the upper portions of the building, including the two towers, created in miniature and skillfully blended with the lower stories for the long shots. That made sense to me, but then I looked up how tall the actual Cathedral of Notre Dame is, and it's around 225 feet tall, so either they made this exact replica of Notre Dame that's actually much larger than the real cathedral because just the lower stories came out 225 feet tall, or the information in the booklet is inaccurate. It seems more likely to me that they did just build the lower half, because it would be very extravagant to build an exact replica of the facade of the entire cathedral, but that's still possible. It could have been done. It was obviously the most expensive film ever made at this point. I really don't know what the truth is. Either way, it's impressive. And I also wanted to mention, while I'm here doing this addendum, I actually have been to Notre Dame. I visited there some 20 plus years ago, and I remember being quite in awe of being inside the building. Actually, it's quite a majestic place to be in, even though I was just 11 years old. But so I was kind of not sure what to make of the whole kind of, for me, it's a controversy in my head only now, how much of that was really made. And it really just feels, and I think I mentioned that later on in the video, that it's just really impressive how it looks. It looks like it was built all entirely, because it's so pristinely captured on film, the way that the cathedral looks. So I don't know, the jury's out on that, but either way, It's impressive. And one final thing that I noted during editing that I had to mention is this particular moment at the beginning of the film where we see Quasimodo. We've established that he's deaf, and he places his hands on the stone as if he's sensing and feeling something, and he looks up and we see the bells. Oh, it's an amazing moment that I just didn't catch when I first watched the film. I'll talk later on about the use of bells in the soundtrack, and this is another way in which it really works, but I never quite clocked this. So some of these details you miss when you're watching a film, but it's a really wonderful moment and piece of acting from Lon Chaney where he just is slowly sensing and feeling the bells of the cathedral. Great moment. Then there's one special effects shot in the film. It looks like a very early form of blue screen. I don't know how it was done exactly. Maybe it was very crude rotoscoping, but it's on screen for such a short period of time, you almost don't really get a chance to analyze it. It's a shot looking down of Quasimodo at the beginning of the film, jumping up and down on one of the gargoyles and looking down at the crowd below. But mostly the visuals of kind of the spectacle on show of Paris and Notre Dame, the murkiness of the dark alleys. It's wonderful production design. You see some of these like set extensions or matte paintings in these older films. You can see the seams around the edges. This one's pretty flawless. I did like inside the cathedral, you get these shots of like the corridors, and then it's just a wall, and on that wall it's painted more corridors like in a forced perspective, which you can very much see and tell what they're doing, but it's a nice effect nonetheless, and I appreciate those little details of the painted backdrops and things like that. Generally, the performances I thought were really good. They kind of rag on the performers a bit in the audio commentary on the disc, but I really like them. And, again, Lon Chaney is kind of, steals the show. But it's a bit like that kind of, the Hannibal Lecter or Darth Vader only being in the film for 15 minutes. You never really knew it. But I did kind of feel his absence a little bit in certain sections. And that may be down to the fact that we don't have the complete version of the film. And I'll talk about this a bit more once I get to talking about how the film looks and the transfer. But once the film had been shown for a certain period of time in its initial run, it was then cut down and sent off to other distributors and countries and so on. And about 15 to 20 minutes, I think, were cut from the film. And you feel a lot of that. I feel like he is such a well-performed character, and I miss his presence a little bit at times. There is at least one confirmed deleted scene of him, I think, trying to buy a dress for Esmeralda or something like that. I've forgotten the exact terms of the deleted scene. There's some stills of it that still exist, but the full version of the film has never been found. Maybe one day we'll get a Metropolis-like circumstance that will crop up, but probably not. But it's still, it's a good hour, 40 minutes, and at the time it was reviewed as being just over 2 hours. So I think about 20 minutes worth of footage was cut out. And it's a shame that they do that, and that, foresight didn't seem to play into too much of the dealings of kind of storing these films back in the silent era. But I still think we're so lucky to get all the stuff that we do, and that all the stuff that has survived. Because, certainly there's been so many great Blu-ray releases of these silent films and hundreds of DVD releases. So, I count ourselves lucky that we have some of this stuff, but it's just a shame that it could have been even better, So anyway, the film itself, I loved. I could go much more in depth in it than that, but I want to kind of get to talking about the Blu-ray and stuff as well. I don't want these videos to be too long. But and you get the tinting of kind of, the different, like the day and the night. They actually did a lot of nighttime shooting, which is very rare for kind of the silent era, really. A lot of day for night stuff was hugely common, but they wanted all the kind of torches and stuff and the big crowd scenes. And so they really worked hard to make those nighttime scenes work. And it was a grueling shoot, very, very long shoot and stuff. And the climax of the film, I was surprised by where it went. I thought that some of the violence in the film was interesting because it cuts away from the blows of people hitting each other or being tortured and so on and so forth. There's some very effective moments of that where you don't see like Quasimodo getting whipped. You just see his cry, after the whip. But there is a theory that's kind of delved into on the audio commentary that perhaps this was a kind of censored version of the film, and that there was even apparently in the 1920s a service that was provided for people to actually rent out the film reel to kind of project it, at home. And I would only imagine this is a premium service. But there is a theory that perhaps that was the version that was given to people who could kind of rent the print to screen for themselves. But I think there might be some weight to that, because there are some violent moments in the film where it just doesn't really show you the the full impact, and it kind of is effective, but also kind of leaves you wanting a little bit more, I suppose. But generally, I really like the ensemble feel of it in terms of all the different characters and wondering who was going to screw over who and who was going to turn up to save the day. Like I was really quite wrapped up in it. One particular thing I wanted to mention before I round off my thoughts on the film is when Phoebus takes out Esmeralda for the first time. They go to this kind of pub or bar, and they sit down to chat. And basically, the scene then cuts to them after a few hours or so, and to show the passage of time, they cut away to a spider's web up on the ceiling. I didn't notice this until it was pointed out in one of the features on the Blu-ray, but it's the spider crawling towards its prey. And so when you have this kind of the meeting of Phoebus and Esmeralda, and who's ensnaring who, I suppose, just kind of a clever thing. But for me, I just thought it was like, wow, this is like an early example of like almost a pillow shot. The famous Ozu term, where you just kind of, you take a breather and you just go to a shot of something else, and then you come back, and instead of a few moments later, you get this shot of and it's something that felt uncommon to me in silent films, is that kind of cinema language of just taking a kind of cutaway shot that doesn't feel completely removed from the scene, and then cutting back, and then the scene continues to progress. But yeah, so I really liked the way the film was made and the kind of the scale of it, but I enjoyed the characters and the story and the particularly striking ending. So I love the film. I thought it was great, and I'm glad that I've finally seen it. And let's talk about the Blu-ray. So how does it look? It's a rough one, and not in a bad way. It's down to the kind of the source material at hand. The Blu-ray, I think, looks fantastic, but it isn't a case of wow, this, okay, it is a 4K restoration, and I think people might go into this expecting like some of the best silent film and you get there's some really great ones out there. A lot of Buster Keaton's films look pretty pristine now that they've gone through quite a few number of restorations in the high definition era, but this one's a 4K restoration of a 16mm print, and so you can do however many restorations that you want in terms of like 4K, 8K. You're not going to get much more out of it when it's a 16mm, and that's again once the film was cut down, the 35mm print was, I guess, discarded or put who knows where. So really, the only kind of source material they have is the 16mm print, and so it isn't going to look as great as some other Blu-ray releases of silent films, but it looks great. I think that, there's a lot of crackling, a lot of scratches on the print. Sometimes it goes out of focus for a few frames, but I kind of like the charm of that. And I think that they've done a wonderful job with, the source material that they had. And, the tinting looks great. The intertitles look great. So I think, it's as good as it's ever going to look, probably. And for me, a very, very good transfer from a pretty kind of dated source and a lower quality source than usually. I mean, a lot of these bigger films, they do tend to have a 35mm negative that they're working from, even if it's damaged and kind of messed up. But I think it looks damn good. So that's the Blu-ray and the transfer and stuff. Oh, and the score. I really didn't want to forget the score. So the score was newly done in 2019 by Nora Kroll Rosenbaum and Laura Karpman. So I don't know, I haven't heard any of the scores that were previously made for this release. And I don't know, because I really love silent films that have their original score that's been kind of re-recorded and stuff. Obviously, this is an interpretation, but they've incorporated the bells of the cathedral. Quasimodo is, of course, the bell ringer, very iconic part of the character, and is beautifully performed by Lon Chaney. One of the kind of more striking moments of the film, when he's grabbing onto that rope and ringing the bell, and through celebration or through routine, there's some really great moments there. But they use the bells in the score, and usually I kind of recoil from any modern kind of retrospective score done for a silent film where they include sound effects and stuff. But that was the only thing they really used. And towards the end, I just thought, how could you not? It's such an integral part of the story. In a way it is, in a way it isn't, but there are certain moments that, you know, it's just, it fits so well. You kind of need it there. Like, there's a moment where the bells get rung, a very impactful moment, and the characters look up. And if you don't have the bells, then it almost robs you of the kind of, and I would imagine they would have that when they were playing the film, some form of the sound effect with bells. So I feel like it needs it. But also there's just some haunting stuff going on in the score. Some really beautiful passages, and I think it really, for me, enhanced my enjoyment of the film. Like, it was a really fitting score, so they both did a great job with that. So let's talk about the extras of the film. So we have a new audio commentary with author Stephen Jones and author and critic Kim Newman, a brand new interview with author and critic Kim Newman on the many adaptations of the novel, and a brand new interview with film historian Jonathan Rigby. And then the booklet we'll get to after that. So the commentary I really enjoyed, and I'm gonna try my best here to go through all the extras, or at least most of them. I'm not gonna have the time, if I'm gonna start reviewing these new releases and stuff on a regular basis, to go through all the extras. But you know, where I can, particularly with the MOC stuff, I'm gonna try. But the commentary, it's, for me, I don't really tend to listen to like critic commentaries too much, but I feel like it was worth kind of giving it a shot because I was so intrigued about this film, and I really enjoyed it. At first, I'll be fair, the first 5 minutes I thought, and it wasn't that it was bad or anything. It's just that, you know, my time is limited, and so I was like, I don't know. But the more they got into it, I really enjoyed the commentary. Kim Newman kind of unnerves me a little bit in that he sounds a lot like Mark Kermode in his cadence and stuff, and a little bit of the accent. And Stephen Jones seemed to be trying to vying for his way into the conversation a little bit, not in a bad way, but the first like 10-20 minutes, Kim Newman is like, don't. He's got so much that's going on, and Stephen Jones is just trying to like, the hell over here. And I've seen that they've done a lot of stuff together, so they're obviously friends and work very well together and stuff. And I felt like as the commentary settled in more, it was more of an evenly balanced back and forth between the two of them. Incredibly like smooth and flowing. This is like the weird like thing that no one ever thinks about, but I think about. Like, I wonder if that was a one take, whether there was like edited stuff, you know, because I would imagine a lot of commentaries do get edited and kind of for brevity, or that maybe they have to retake a few things. But I just thought it flowed so beautifully right until the very end. It was just so smoothly done. You know, some commentaries you get hiccups and dead air. None of that here. It's airtight, and it's all fascinating stuff about the film, about Lon Chaney. They talk a lot about Lon Chaney and the makeup he used to do for himself, and how things compare to these days in terms of like that, you know, the makeup that you probably won't be able to do anymore because you'd need a makeup person, and just you know, there's all sorts of stuff that, with him, like the chemicals that he used that might have kind of, you know, harmed him over time, what by doing all his own makeup and prosthetics and all that kind of stuff. They talk about the different film adaptations of the story in terms of, you know, earlier than this 1923 version and up to the Disney version, TV versions even, talking about, you know, various actors who played the part of Quasimodo, like Charles Lawton, Anthony Hopkins, Mandy Patinkin. So there's just like all sorts of information there. It's not always scene-specific stuff, but they do comment on that, you know, a lot as well, and talk about all of like the actors in the film. You get so much information, so much research and knowledge, and also personal experience, which I really like. They talked about how they first saw the film like decades ago and how their feelings on it have changed over the years and stuff. And they call out stuff that they think isn't too good, like this actor is pretty bad or whatever. So I prefer that when you get more honest takes as well. So I really loved the audio commentary, very informative. And by the end of it, I was like, yeah, I should give these critic commentaries more of a chance in the future. The Kim Newman standalone piece was very good. He talks about the various adaptations again of the original novel, and they talk a lot about Victor Hugo and kind of his writings and stuff. And I found that kind of interesting. And there's a weird kind of like time travel going on here, where in this video I'm talking to you about a film that was, you know, they started to make it 100 years ago, and back then, the novel was in the previous century, in the 1800s. And then the novel itself was set like hundreds of years before that. So there's just this story just keeps going and going and going. People still keep talking about it and adapting it and all sorts. And so, yeah, it's one of those classic stories you always know the name of. But for me, this is really the first time I ever experienced it with a 100-year-old silent film. It's weird how those things work out sometimes. I enjoyed the Kim Newman piece, but I thought that the Jonathan Rigby segment was even better. The Kim Newman one is about 25 minutes, something like that. The Jonathan Rigby one is 35 minutes. And again, at first I was like, oh, do I have the time for this? But man, it sucked me in. Nice editing on this one with kind of the kind of pictures illustrating the people he was talking about. He talks about the minutiae of like the day that this film was released in the UK, and like a Quasimodo impersonation competition that took place in the UK. All these little tiny details. In this one, the Jonathan Rigby piece is more about the production history of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was fascinating stuff. You know, there's just so much to get into. I'm not even going to begin to cover some of the more interesting things, but I really liked how, for me, Rigby's kind of delivery of this video piece felt very theatrical to me at times. The way he would pause every now and then, or kind of add an inflection to something when he's really relishing telling some of these stories. I was not surprised when I looked him up after the fact to see that he's also an actor, because there's a very actorly kind of flair to some of the stuff he's talking about. Lots of stuff about Lon Chaney, again, and kind of how Lon Chaney, this was kind of a Lon Chaney production, you know, and Carl Laemmle was the kind of the famous kind of, you know, studio head and producer and stuff who was wrangling a lot of these things, but then they were starting to come into the idea of the public knowing like who a producer was or who a director was. But also that, you know, Lon Chaney was very hands-on with the production of this film, the pre-production of this film, who was going to direct. And the actress who plays Esmeralda said that she felt like she was directed more by Lon Chaney when they were making the film than the actual director, Wallace Worsley, who'd worked with Lon Chaney many times before, and there's a familiarity there, I guess, that kind of got him the part of the director. But they, you know, this is, I think, the first time apparently that they used a PA system on a film, because the set was so big and there were so many people to wrangle and so on. But the Lon Chaney would kind of get down into the nitty-gritty stuff of the more, I guess, focused character stuff. But, you know, you get these stories that, you know, how much was he really involved? How much did the director really direct this film and all that kind of stuff? But I thought the production history around it was fascinating, and there's just so much great information there. I loved this one. So anytime I'll see a Jonathan Rigby piece on an upcoming Blu-ray, I'll be all over that for sure. So 2 really good kind of video pieces and a great commentary, excellent new score. Now let's talk about the booklet. The booklet is a fascinating one because, once again, I got to be honest, like, you know, is it just me, or is it like, oh, it's got a booklet? Do you ever sit down and read the whole thing? There probably are people who do. I don't. I always have the intention of doing it, of course, but it's just one of those things where, again, time, and especially when you're a collector and you have so many films, you just think, when am I going to get around to it, you know? And also, a lot of these things that I don't read until I've seen them, and you know how many films in my collection I still have not yet seen. But what's so great about this? So we have like the typical kind of cast and crew at the beginning here. There's a really good essay by Philip Kemp, The Image of the Hunchback. This goes into some of the details that you've already heard on the Blu-ray features, but this one breaks down a lot of other things, and I really enjoyed. It's a very kind of concise and detailed, full kind of summary of the production of the film, basically, and actually confirms that it's 25 minutes that were removed, and it was a sequence where Quasimodo was visiting a second-hand clothes dealer to buy clothes for Esmeralda while she was safely lodged in the cathedral sanctuary. And you get some nice pictures, but the show-stopping thing here is the film's original 1923 souvenir program, published by Universal to promote this extravagantly budgeted super jewel production. So they would have like their normal films, the jewel productions, then the super jewel productions. And this is just fascinating stuff. I read this all the way through, even like that text you can barely read. I made sure I kind of just read all the fine print. So this is a 1923 original program. It talks about Carl Laemmle right at the front of the top there, a little picture of Victor Hugo in the corner. the program of the actors, and seeing all these different. That actually, what this does, which I found really interesting, because I guess that at a certain point in time, well, for a very long time, you wouldn't have home video. It just didn't exist. So you went to see the film in the cinema, that was it. But if you bought this souvenir program, you can actually read the story of the film, basically, with accompanying pictures of some of the more dramatic moments of the film. I was reading through it and I thought, oh wow, this is actually just going through the story of the entire movie from start to finish. But you get some nice images from it, and then you get kind of the boasting page, like the items of interest about the crowning achievement of the screen. So it tells you 6 months in preparation, 1 year in production. In point of money spent, the most expensive picture ever made. 10 cameramen, 10 assistant cameramen, 105 electricians, 20 sculptors, 750 carpenters, masons, property men and costumers, 550 acres and 50 electric suns for night scenes, and a partridge in a pear tree. So they're really pushing, all the stuff that went into the making of the film. Lon Chaney had no stuntman, which, I guess they tweak the kind of truth a little bit. Like kind of bios on all of the actors, a piece on Universal City. It's just a wonderful program that they've presented here, and it's, up and coming Universal projects are kind of spotlighted too. And I just think it's such a you even have the music sheet for the love theme of the film, and I wonder if that is even used in the new score. That'd be interesting to find out. And then some kind of advertisements for the film, and poster talking about how many weeks the film has been running in different cities around the world, and different release posters from different countries as well. It's a fantastic booklet. I think it's one of my favorite booklets that I've read and gone through, just because of that 1923 original program souvenir. I just think it's great, and it's something that it says on one of the kind of the finer print parts of the souvenir itself. This souvenir is to be sold only at performances of the show, or bought in bulk at this. There's really nice kind of little just snapshots of time 100 years ago of how they would push and promote and kind of commemorate these films as well. And for a film this extravagant and lavish, it's obvious why they put such a lot of attention and detail into this kind of souvenir program. And it's so great that one has survived and been scanned and kind of immortalized in this booklet. I don't know if it's like the full thing. It feels like it's the full thing. And yeah, so I think that's such a wonderful addition. It feels like such a complete package that way. You get the film, you get, this kind of retrospective commentary from these critics, and all sorts of information about the making of the film. A great new score, a gorgeous case with this artwork here and the slipcover, and the booklet that reproduces. For me, this is probably one of my favorite MOC releases now. I absolutely loved it. It's going to be hard to top this one in terms of I feel like this is a new era for my channel, kind of doing these Blu-ray reviews of new releases and stuff. This is going to be hard to top. I just thought it was wonderful. So, and more silent cinema in the collection, you can never go wrong with it. So, Hunchback of Notre Dame from the Masters of Cinema collection. It's by number 270. Out now, I guess, October 2022. Full marks for me. I'm not going to rate these things or anything. I would have done years ago, here's my rating for the film, here's my rating for the extras, and my overall rating. But no, it's fucking great. Fantastic release. Highly recommended. And have you seen it? Let me know. Let me know your thoughts on the film, or the Blu-ray, or anything else regarding it. And let me know if you enjoyed this review. And hopefully you're looking forward to more like this. Thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Oh, you stuck around. Okay. Do you want a little hint of what's coming next as far as Eureka's concerned? Well, the next MOC title I will be reviewing is spy number 269 in the collection. It's funny how that works out. It is The Most Dangerous Game. So that'll be coming soon. But before we get to that, there is another Eureka release I'm also going to be reviewing. which is perfect for the October Halloween season. I'm very much looking forward to diving into these and checking them out. We have Maniacal Mayhem, Boris Karloff in 3 films, The Invisible Ray, Black Friday, and The Strange Door. So look forward to that one, and The Most Dangerous Game coming soon.